And welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Well, now that Governor Cuomo is getting down to work, good government groups are applying pressure on the new administration to make good on some key campaign promises, namely reforming the state's campaign finance laws. Now, my next guests are leading that charge. Blair Horner is the legislative director of the New York Public Interest Research Group, that's better known as NYPIRG, of course. And Barbara Bartoletti is the legislative director for the New York State League of Women Voters, which actually has no little cute acronym, does it?
LWVNY.
Oh, pardon me. Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
So, and to you. You guys had a press conference this morning. You released this lovely report, Capital Investments, which basically isn't a surprise. It says that most of the money that is given out politically is dominated by special interests. And much of the money that Andrew Cuomo and Bob Duffy raised was given to them by special interests, the very same special interests they say they want to.
And big individual donors.
Yeah, same people they say they now want to sideline in state government. One of the pronouncements or the recommendations you say is necessary is public campaign financing. Why is that going to work this time around and it hasn't in the past?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, we have been working on this for a long time. So the implicit in your question is the failures of the past necessarily leading to success in the future.
I'm sorry, Blair, but yes, that is my question.
I mean, the new governor says he wants to do it, right? So that's part of the equation. We've had governors that have said they want to do it in the past. It hasn't happened. But I think that lawmakers feel in the intense unhappiness of the electorate in a way that they never have before. Now, whether or not that leads them to conclude that they want to do a system of public financing, though, who knows? But anytime you want to do an effort like this, you have to first make the case. And so that's what this report was about today, was to show New Yorkers that the campaign finance system, the money that elects their candidates to state government, comes from a very small number of very wealthy donors, either organized in interest groups or individuals. The vast majority of it. New York's system is unusual in the country in the fact that it allows such concentration of contributions to come from so few people.
Right.
And if people are unhappy about Albany and they think that interest groups control Albany, here's the reason why.
Don't you think, though, I mean, Andrew Cuomo has said on multiple occasions, I want to take the power away from the special interests. He said just the other day, he said it just in the inauguration speech, we're going to return this to the people. And then he subsequently made these sort of large, grand gestures of removing the concrete barriers from around the Capitol, of cutting a ribbon to symbolize that he's reopening the second floor to access for the public. Right. So, however, you know, the top donors to his campaign was the real estate, came from the real estate.
Yes.
Sector, and those same people are actually funding the Committee to Save New York, a large part of them, REBNY, which is the real estate board of New York. Steve Spinola was here on the show with me and said, yeah, we'd like to raise $10 million or more to help him fight the budget battle against the public unions. I mean, it just seems like there's a dichotomy in there somewhere.
Very definitely.
Yeah,
and there has been for every administration going back, you know, decades. And I think the difference now, as Blair said, I'm going to just expand a little bit on what Blair said, is that people are beginning, slowly, but they are beginning to get it. All of the scandals you've seen, people see our legislators as an elite group that are in it for their own self-aggrandizement type of thing. And I think you really are at a point with the public now that they want Albany cleaned up. And we can make the case that if you want your property taxes decreased, if you want better education for your children, if you want jobs, if you want whatever it is you want, then you are going to have a louder voice, than the special interests. And the special interests are what control Albany because they do it through campaign finance. And until you get rid of that system and have a public finance system and do all the other things that we say in this report, the pay-to-play, the banning soft money, all of the other ways in which the special interests do crowd into the lawmakers in Albany, you're not going to be able to address the things that people really want to see addressed.
But 2 points, though. It's expensive.
Yes.
Where's the money going to come from? We have a $10 billion budget hole to deal with.
Well, let me just... One quick step back.
Before we get that.
Narrowly on the question of this group being organized in coordination with the governor to fight on the governor's behalf in the budget battle. Since that's happening, we think it's incumbent on the governor to make sure that this package of groups discloses who they are.
Right.
It can't just be called the ABC, we love, fair New York pack.
But under current law, are they required to disclose?
No.
No.
And that's why the governor should demand it of them. If he really is serious about reforming Albany, here's a good test. This group is being organized together. Now, if it's 1,000 groups kicking in $1,000 each, that'd be good to know. But if it's 1,000 groups participating and only 3 groups funding all the money, that would be good to know.
Well,
it's a little bit different.
From very
That's right.
powerful people are
That's
kicking
right. Well,
in some money.
and real estate cares because rent control expires this year. It's going to be a big issue. So just to go back to your question, I mean, it's going to cost money. There's no doubt about it. And New Yorkers at some point are going to have to deal with the fact that someone has to pay for elections. Right now, the people that pay for elections are the people that have business before government. And until that changes, nothing will change. And so you have to change it so that the taxpayers pay for it.
Okay.
Now, in the estimate in there, we based it on what happens in New York City, and this
Right.
Michael Malbin at the University of Albany has done some analyses on this. If you just strictly implemented a 4-to-1 match at the state level, based on New York City experience, and you didn't expect more people to participate, it costs $35 million
That's
more.
a lot of money.
That's right. And if more people participate, which is what we would hope, could cost more, probably $67 million. Now, we have a $135 billion budget. A lot of that money gets spent because interest groups are pressuring the money to go to them. $200 million gets spent on member items, typically. So we believe that that would be money well spent. Just like you have to pay for prisons, schools, and hospitals, you should pay for democracy.
Okay, but arguably, I've worked in New York City. I've covered the New York City Council. I've seen those people who are elected, and you know what? They're swayed by lobbyists. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. They still get lobbied, despite the fact that it is arguably more competitive, and it is, easier for people who don't have means, with the exception of Mayor Bloomberg, of course, and he doesn't participate in the system, and he can spend as much as he wants. There's no limit on that. These people still are susceptible to lobbyists and special interests just because you take the money, some degree of the money out of the system.
And that's not bad in a democracy. Part of a democracy is being able to petition your government. Now, whether it's the teachers that are petitioning government, or whether it is the healthcare workers, or whether it's the librarians and Blair and myself as good government advocates petitioning the government. That's fine. It's just when it's so overwhelmingly lopsided, and only, as I think Governor Cuomo said in his inauguration speech, the whisper of the lobbyists rather than the voices of the people. And it's our job, as through this report, to connect the dots to show that right now your voice as a citizen isn't getting heard at all. And what the League particularly worries about is civic participation goes way down because people say, oh, well, I don't have any voice in government. Their voting goes way down, and then you certainly do have an elitist government, and that's not representative democracy.
Yeah, I mean, it matters on how you define victory. I think some people that talk about public finance will come in and say, this will remove the power of interest groups in the political. It won't. There's nothing you can do about that as long as the U.S. Supreme Court decisions rule. But what this does is it changes the mix. It makes the system more responsive to the public. There's no silver bullet. If people are looking for silver bullets to make Albany the nirvana of democracy, it isn't going to happen. But you can make it better. And what we have now is a lousy system that relies on a very small number of big donors. We think it should be the reverse, a very large number of small donors.
Okay, so there is more than just campaign finance at stake here, right? I mean, Andrew
Yes.
Cuomo has talked about ethics reform writ large. He talked about it in the campaign trail. Now he's under a lot of pressure by a lot of different interests, but in particular the New York Times wants him editorialized on a desire for him to put out an omnibus ethics bill in his first week. So far, I'm not seeing that. I did see, however, his second executive order was a mandated ethics training for top officials in his cabinet and also state agency heads. What do you think of that?
Well, we think that's a good thing. I mean, it was something that we've, in fact, supported.
And why hasn't it been happening up to this point?
That's a good question. I mean, the Commission on Public Integrity has always had a training option for state agencies and the second floor, the executive branch. Sometimes agencies take them up on it, sometimes they don't. And so what the governor's saying is, well, we already have an ethics training. I want all of my top officials to know what the rules are so that they don't mistakenly, let's give the former health commissioner, Antonia Novello, the benefit of the doubt. That when she
two
was,
health commissioners ago now.
That's right.
That's
right. When she was telling people, her staff, to go pick up the dry cleaning and to go supermarket shopping for her, let's assume the best intention. She didn't know. She should know. this removes the argument by anyone in the top official of the executive branch that they don't know what the rules are.
No plausible deniability.
That's right, exactly.
Right.
So now they're on the hook. So that's a good thing. Whether or not the governor should put out his own omnibus ethics bill in the first week or not, that's not an issue as much for NYPIRG. What we want is the law to change. If that takes a week, a month, 3 months, that's fine with us. But the law has to change. The law in New York does not work, and we've seen it with the series of scandals and controversies that have embroiled Albany now for years.
Yeah, but the last governor, actually, David Paterson, vetoed the ethics reform bill.
He did, and it wasn't, it was a hard-fought ethics bill, too. When you have to get the different majorities in the houses and the minorities to actually come together and work on a bill, it was what we thought we could get at the time. However, things have intervened since then. We've had, what, 2 or 3 more convictions of top senators. We have a new governor. We have a new majority leader. And now I think what we would, the League, and I think our good government colleagues are looking for is we want a comprehensive ethics bill that they will all get together on, negotiate together, get it as strong as we possibly can, and then move forward and deal with redistricting, perhaps.
You're talking, though, about a difference of approach. In other words, what the Times is asking the governor to do is to put forward a bill and say, here, legislature, take this and see what you can do with it. This is what I would like. What you're suggesting is that if you negotiate it on the back end and then come up to an agreement that you can argue, that you can announce together, it might be more effective.
The governor himself, he can put out everything and anything, and we saw that with Mr. Spitzer, and we saw it with other governors recently, where they put out a bill. Nobody touches it in either the Senate or the Assembly. A governor can propose, but he cannot sponsor himself bills in either house.
Right.
So what would seem reasonable, because we have this new era of hopefully collegiality and getting, moving the state forward, that perhaps the leaders could sit down, their staff, sit down and with the governor's leadership and with the caution that I think all these newly elected people have that, dear God, I could go the way of 10 or 12, whatever we have a very high incumbency return rate here. But people did lose seats this year because of the anti-incumbency feeling, because of the scandals.
And I think
so
let's
start moving forward.
This year, as even compared to last year, is the issue's been thoroughly debated now for 2 years. The legislature passed a bill. Now, Patterson vetoed it, I think, because he wasn't serious about getting anything done, but they did pass a bill. So it's not like they're going to have to start from scratch. And with strong gubernatorial leadership, hopefully they'll come up with a better bill than last year.
But arguably, the only problem here is that the state has so many problems. I mean, they're mounting just sort of by the day. And really, one might argue that it's the fiscal pressure that really needs to be addressed first, does it not? And then subsequently, maybe you can do the ethics stuff.
This governor can actually walk and chew gum at the same time, and so can these legislative leaders. It's not they have large enough staffs that's particularly in the legislature, as Blair said, have kind of done this a little bit before, have been involved in this issue. Dan Squadron's office was involved in it on the Democratic Senate side. I think Dean Skelos's office certainly has enough people who have been around long enough to know about ethics. So this isn't, as Blair said, something really new. However, I think what the governor has said and what happened during the election season, that people were fed up with Albany, that we're what's the punchline, that we're in a national embarrassment, the joke is on us, that people are watching. And with people watching, I think this governor can begin to do the budget, which he clearly has to do right out of the gate, but that they can, on the side, and we're willing to help, can actually formulate some good ethics legislation.
And I think the governor's budget has to be out by February 1st.
Right.
Then they start hearings, then the process unfolds. You don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where Governor Cuomo's bottom line is on ethics reform. We know where the legislature was at last year. So maybe they can't get a deal together, and then maybe the governor should put out a proposal to put pressure on the legislature. We're not saying not to do that, but it seems to me, given what has happened historically, that this governor could probably sit down with both houses and see if there's a potential for agreement, because what New Yorkers want to see is substance, not rhetoric.
Well, we shall see. His State of the State, of course, is on Wednesday, and we shall see if he actually even touches this topic. We know he's going to be talking some fiscal discipline issues, but not so sure about what he will say.
He'll mention this, I would gather.
Okay, well, we shall see. In the meantime, I want to thank you both for joining us, Barbara Letty and Blair Horner. Thanks.